But moving into a team that we think will compete and that might be on the upswing is the Bentworth Bearcats. They went 2-8 last year, 2-5 in conference, but there's a lot of things to make us hope for the future. Coach JJ Knabb returns. Trent Kavanaugh and Owen Patricek return. Maybe the best 1-2 punch in this division. What are your overall thoughts? Predicting Bentworth. Do they look like maybe a playoff threat? They definitely looked well down the year, but the defense kind of struggled. So just your overall thoughts going into the year for Bentworth.
Yeah, Bentworth definitely needs work to do, but I definitely think in having Trent Kavanaugh and Owen Patricek, I think that's the big thing. You mentioned it. Um, if I thought they were the best to do in the Tri-County South, that's a little too early for me to tell. I think there's a couple duos that are pretty good. We'll get into Damani Stafford and Jaden Zuzak of California. Um, I think they definitely are, notable as being a pretty incredible duo. But as far as the Bentworth Bearcats, they definitely have something to be happy about and something to be intrigued about in Owen and Trent. I think Bentworth, right now, how I look at it, I have them out of the playoffs, but I think they're one win away, one upset away. This is just my opinion. But I really think they're one win away from making the playoffs, and I think they'll definitely be in the push. Even late in the season, trying to make that last playoff spot. And I really look forward to seeing how Bentworth does. We talked to Trent and Owen a lot over this off season, and they seem hungry and thirsty for it. And I'm really excited to see those guys out on the field as well as the whole Bearcat team.
Yeah, probably the biggest question about their team, besides the defense, is going to be a quarterback. Sean Ziak graduated over the offseason, and he was kind of, especially earlier in the year for the Bearcats, he was basically the main piece of that offense. Now, as the season wore on, they started to transition more into that 1-2 punch, run-heavy offense, and you're probably going to see way more of that this year with more experience from Kavanaugh and Patricek. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the offense looks like, who's going to be handing off to those guys if they try to implement more passing like they did at the beginning of last year. And then defensively, again, a lot of production coming back, but it was kind of a weaker part of their team, especially against West Green last year. I think they put 80 points on them. So that's going to need to be improvement if this team wants to kind of pull an upset against a West Green or a Cal and kind of sneak their way into a playoff spot. Not sure what's even going to happen for playoffs right now, but we're going to talk like we're assuming there will be a playoffs this season. So I have their most intriguing game, October 9th, home against West Green. That is going to be a huge matchup, especially for Bentworth at home. Maybe there'll be fans of that game if things trend the way they're looking right now. And Bentworth they're going to be excited for that game, especially after what happened last year. I think you were there. Just tell me what you saw from Bentworth from that game, and then if you think they're going to be able to turn the corner and kind of pull some of the games that were like that last year. Kind of help mold their team this year.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I was at the West Green Bentworth game, and I believe the final score, I believe it was, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was like 84-6 or something like that, or maybe 84-12. It's just very bad. But obviously, when someone puts 84 points up on someone in a football game, it's not good. But I will say Bentworth, they just, I don't know what it was, but West Green had 3 defensive touchdowns. Bentworth was very sloppy with the ball. It was early on in the season. It was their second game of the season. They're still kind of getting the quote unquote hiccups out of the way, and everything, and it was a young team last year, as a whole. So, they were just, playing that dominant West Green team that was last season. It was probably not the best for them to play them early on, but obviously you can't help the schedule. But, I was talking to Owen and Trent, like I mentioned, they had mentioned that game as the game they look forward to the most. And I know I look forward to that game because that game could very well just, the winner of that game might just be the last team out of Tri-County South to make the playoffs. So that could be a huge game up in Bentleyville on October 9th.
Yeah, and when you look at the teams that finished above them, obviously Monessen did. I think that turns into a win heading into this year. I mean, we'll talk about Monessen later, but as far as the other teams, Jefferson Morgan, West Green. I think they could win Jefferson Morgan. That's pretty much even. But between West Green and Cal, which of those two teams do you think they have a better chance at maybe pulling an upset against this year? Because if they do have playoff aspirations, I think they have to beat at least one of those teams. So which of those teams do you think they can maybe swipe one against? I think West Green is a pretty good candidate right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. West Green's got a lot of answers. They got to, they have a lot of answers too as well on their team. Replacing Ben Jackson, replacing the whole backfield, losing Gavin Scott, a quarterback, which they, did implement Nathan Orndorff later in the season. So him back there having that experience, but losing Colin Walker, who was close to eclipsing 1,000 yards last season. And then, of course, Ben Jackson eclipsing 3,000 yards, first player in Whitfield history to do that. So they'll have a lot of answers down in Rogersville for Coach Hansen. So, I look for West Green. Out of the two teams you said, I look for West Green to be that team.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an exciting game for them. Maybe it won't be our game of the week, but we'll definitely have. I think you might be going to that game, so that'll be an interesting one.